Is it possible for a country to tax its way to growth? Not according to a man who made his curve famous. Arthur Laffer is a celebrated US economist whose eponymous Laffer Curve illustrates the relationship between tax rates and government tax revenue, suggesting that after a certain point, higher taxes reduce the tax take. He joins me live. Thank you very much indeed for coming on the programme, Dr. Laffer. I wonder then, after that particular budget with taxes reaching 38% of GDP in 2029, where is the UK on your curve?
Well, where it is, I'm not sure, but I think it's way beyond where it should be. I mean, if you look at it, I love the way you said it there. Have you ever heard of an economy being taxed into prosperity? And I think the answer has to be no. If you look at the British history so far, I mean, goodness gracious. And the other thing I'd like to say is, have you ever heard of a poor person spending himself into wealth? I mean, those are just two non-starters. And I watched it, the speech in Parliament. I watched Rachel Reeves do it, very articulate, but very combative. You guys do all this noise and brouhaha going on. But bottom line, I think you're really missing a chance of really bringing Britain back by tax rate reductions and spending reductions, which really are needed, regulatory reductions. I didn't see any of that. I saw an increase in the minimum wage, which just guarantees that low-income workers don't get jobs. That's all it does.
When you say it guarantees that low-income workers won't get jobs, in what way?
Well, just imagine the minimum wage were £1,000 an hour. Who would hire one?
Mm-hmm. But at £10.85 an hour, I guess the gamble is businesses can afford to do this. They need to have those workers. They're going to hire them.
Yeah, but if they need the workers, they're going to hire them. That's true for some, but for others that are on the margin, they won't be hired because you're raising the minimum wage, and it's now too expensive, and you won't do it. You can look at San Francisco and see what's happening there with fast food restaurants because they have a $15 minimum wage in San Francisco, and it's really killing all the low-end jobs of people who don't have all the skills to make $1 million or £1 million a year. And it means these people never get that first job because they aren't in the marketplace worth it. And after being unemployed for a year or two, they lose those skills and then become unemployable. And after being unemployable for a year or two, they become hostile. And then you have to sort of protect yourself from them. And this is the sort of vicious cycle that I was hoping the Labour Party would avoid and would go in the opposite direction to try to bring those people back into the economy and give them the beginning jobs so they can make a lot more later on.
Or, of course, Arthur, those people who, without those jobs, go on to welfare and get welfare payments. And again,
Exactly.
we're seeing the welfare bill just balloon without really any attempt to temper it.
Yeah, that's true. And I'm an American, so I don't want to talk, be judgmental on you guys. It's your country.
Please do.
Your budget, your things. And I love you dearly. I want nothing other than great prosperity for Britain. Honestly, that's really true. I love the country. But I do think you're going the wrong way. What you need to do is lower the highest tax rates, broaden the base, and reduce government spending and deregulate, especially energy. You could be one of the highest value energy countries in the world if you could just get rid of those regulations there. And this is not the way I see this budget going. And I'm disappointed because Labor has no reason not to do a good job. There's no reason why they can't understand good economics. I mean, think of it this way. Which would you prefer to see? Writing checks to people who don't work or cutting tax rates on people who do work? It's pretty straightforward. And that's the way I'd love to have seen them go, but that doesn't seem to be the way they have gone.
I think I once heard you say, Arthur, that that a lot of times these kind of budgets, whether they're in the United States or whether they're done in the UK, they're almost an exercise in kind of performative virtue signaling. That they're giving the money. They're giving the money to the people they think ought to be having the money, and actually it actually the consequences end up being worse for them.
Yes, of course it is. It's what's called the transfer theorem. The more you give to people who don't have, and the more you take from people who do have, the guarantee that sooner or later everyone will be equal at zero. and that is what has happened to Britain over a long, long period of time, with a marked exception under Lady Thatcher. She did a really good job during that. But you saw what happened when Gordon Brown raised the highest marginal income tax rate from 40p to 50p. You saw what happened when Cameron dropped it back from 50p to 45p. And you've seen the decline in Britain. And this, unfortunately, does nothing to stop that decline. And it makes me very sad to think of Britain going in this direction. But, that's what democracies do. And
well, let me put this to you. So it would be great if we could just have a flat tax rate of
course.
I don't know, whatever it is, whatever the numbers pulled up at, on a very broad base. But how would the state pay for anything? How would hospitals run? How would roads be, have the potholes filled on roads? How would anything work?
Well, you would have to do the potholes filled on wood would have to be funded by taxes, and schools would be for sure subsidized if not funded by taxes. But if you had a low rate, broad-based flat tax on Britain, along with your VAT, you could raise lots and lots of money without discriminating, forcing people to leave the country at much, much lower tax rates than they are right now. You'd get rid of the lawyers, accountants, deferred income specialists, favor grabbers, bribers of politicians, all of that stuff. And you would be able to have a much more efficient economy without sacrificing your healthcare system, without sacrificing the schools. In fact, your schools would improve, your healthcare system would improve. I mean, you need to reward people for doing a good job and not reward them if they do a bad job. And that has to be done in education. That has to be done in healthcare as well. All of these areas need to be run on an incentive basis. And if you don't, you're just not going to get high quality products. Final
question. If you could have been at that dispatch box this afternoon, Arthur, what's the one big change you'd have made?
My gig has always been tax rates. When you raise tax rates on the highest income earners, they always reduce collections of taxes from those people. This is demonstrated time and again, especially under Gordon Brown's budget, where he raised the highest rate from 40p to 50p. That Britain went into deep decline, lost the money, rich people left the country, and their services were no longer there to provide output. I would really lower the highest tax rate in Britain dramatically right away and get rid of tax loopholes. That's what I would do. And then start worrying about how you parse out the funds to the worthwhile projects that you have. That's the way I'd do it.
Great to talk to you. Really, really appreciate your time on this day. Dr. Arthur Laffer is an American economist. The eponymous Laffer Curve is in his name. His book is Prosperity Through Growth. And I'm trying to find, where is the growth that they promised? There isn't any.